Welcome back to the Plus Side of Nashville. Nearly 700,000 children are abused in America every year, according to the National Children's Alliance. As we continue our conversation on child abuse, here with me now to talk about what happens when an abuse case reaches the court system is Lynn Farrar, the Executive Director of Tennessee CASA. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Well, this is a conversation, as I had earlier with Sue, that's so important to have. It can be difficult sometimes, but it's a necessary question. That the what if I told you, and 700,000 children, it's a large number, not just sexual abuse, but physical, mental, all those types of abuses. Explain exactly what CASA is. I know CASA is an acronym. Tell us what that is and then how the program works.
Well, it stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates, and so that's exactly what we are. We have volunteers who are appointed by the juvenile court to advocate for children who've been abused and neglected and to make recommendations about their best interests.
So they're trusting volunteers to make these recommendations.
Yes.
Do you have to have any sort of legal background, Lynn, or any kind of special training, I would imagine?
Well, we have extensive recruiting and screening and training processes for our volunteers. As you might imagine, if we are having volunteers report to the court and work with children, they have to be of the highest caliber of character and quality. So each of our programs are responsible to do an extensive interview, background checks, references, personal references, and then 30 hours of pre-service training for every volunteer. So while there's not really a requirement for each volunteer, like certain educational requirements or professional requirements, we train them so that if you have a heart for children and you care about what happens for them, then we have staff that can support you and help you every step of the way.
Oh, that's wonderful. Is CASA in all Tennessee counties? It sounds like it should be if it's not.
Well, we wish it were.
It's not.
It is not.
Okay.
We've grown a lot, so we are in 56 counties now. We just added 2 counties in the last couple of weeks, and we have 39 left to go.
Okay.
So we are working on that all the time. And basically, first it has to be the juvenile judge, because we work in the juvenile court, has to be interested in having a CASA program in the court. And then there has to be some leaders in the community that want to support a nonprofit organization that would support the program.
Okay. How does a CASA volunteer go about doing their jobs? Because there has to be some investigation, I know, to be able to carry facts back to the judge. Mm-hmm. How does the investigation process work?
Well, it's interesting because, as you talked on your earlier segment, if we are suspicious of abuse at all in the state of Tennessee, we call the Department of Children's Services Child Abuse Hotline. And then DCS has to actually investigate what happened to this child. And what the results of their investigation has to go to the juvenile court. So the juvenile court oversees, do we need to remove this child from the home? Does the child need to go to foster care? Are there relatives that could provide safety for this child? You know, all kinds of things that can be done to protect this child. And parents have a right to parent their children. So they also do a plan of what do parents need to do, what does DCS need to do, and how can CASA help along the way, what needs to happen to protect these children. And so when that petition from DCS goes to juvenile court, it's at that point the juvenile judge can appoint a CASA volunteer. And that volunteer becomes a member of the team. So while we feel like we're extra eyes and ears for the court, we feel like we're also extra arms and legs for DCS. Yeah. So we bring all the information we can to the table so the team all together can make the best recommendations to protect the child.
Oh, that's wonderful. So it sounds like that you're going to need to put a little bit of time aside. Is there an average amount of time that a CASA volunteer spends working on a particular case, just one particular case, say?
Well, our national CASA standards allow volunteers only to have 1 or 2 cases at a time, depending on the time of the volunteer has. But In the beginning, it's pretty busy. That first month when you're going to those meetings and you're going to court and you're getting to know everybody in the family and, of course, the child. So it's busy that first, but the average is about 10 hours a month. And that's not really that much.
It really is not.
And it's pretty flexible. And the thing about our programs is we have great staff who give support to the volunteers. And so if you're working and you can't get to court that day, your supervisor for the CASA staff will know what's going on and can be there for you if you can't get to court. So we work hand in hand with our volunteers to make sure that they can get everything done.
Once a case has been closed, say they've decided on what's going to happen in the court system, is it done? Is it over with for the CASA volunteer?
Well, for the most part, it is. When the child, we're closed when there's a safe permanent home accomplished for the child. And so when the court closes and DCS closes, we close too. But we monitor those cases so that 6 months later, we make sure those children have not come back to the attention of juvenile court for any kind of abuse issue. And so one of the ways we measure our effectiveness statewide is 90% of the children who close do not come back to juvenile court for any kind of abuse issue, which one says we make quality reports with fact-based recommendations, but we're also addressing all the issues that brought the child to the attention of the court in the first place. Our actual number is 95% of the children stay safe.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And so we're very proud of that. We really try to be thorough to address whatever's going on with the child and the family.
That is wonderful, Odds. I love to hear that. If someone wanted to be a CASA volunteer, what's the process like? What do they need to do?
Well, the easiest thing if they want to get connected with their local program is go to beforthechild.org. That's our volunteer recruitment website, beforthechild.org.
I think we've got a video that we can take a look at that tells you more about beforthechild.org and how you can become a volunteer. Take a look.
CASA volunteers are appointed by the juvenile court when there's been abuse and neglect in their lives.
The children come into the system through no fault of their own.
There are times when the court system is too overwhelmed.
The CASA volunteer can make a huge difference.
Growing CASA in huge numbers will help us serve more children.
There are so many children out there that need you, and you would be perfect.
Wow. I think anybody who has a heart for children, anybody who feels like that they want to get involved in the community, this would be a wonderful way to do it. And you were telling me too, Lynn, that anybody can be a CASA volunteer. Are there certain qualities that you all really look for? If you pass the background check and you come out good, you got all these great recommendations. Are there certain qualities, if I'm sitting at home trying to figure out, is this a good fit for me?
I think sometimes volunteers get nervous about, well, how do I know what to do? And I said, well, what if it was your child? What would you do? And so when you tap into that parent or that heart for children, you automatically know what needs to happen for this child. If this child needs therapy or if this child needs educational help, whatever you would want for your own child who may be struggling, that's what you look for CASA. So our training is very comprehensive. We talk about all the issues that families and children have, like poverty and lack of education, mental illness, substance addiction, all those things. What needs to go right for children, like attachment and relationship and having that special person that's always listening to the child. And then we talk about the legal process and how do we talk to people? How do we talk to parents about these very serious things? But we find that parents really appreciate their CASA volunteer, because even if something really terrible has happened, that parent loves their children. And typically it's because the parent has had trauma themselves. We hear a lot about adverse childhood experiences in the state of Tennessee, and it's true. When we've had trauma as children, we oftentimes will not know how to parent our own, but we can learn. So usually parents really appreciate that volunteer speaking up for the child they love.
Lynn, so much good information. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Definitely go check out TennesseeCASA.org for more information. And I want to also thank Sue Ford White from Our Kids for being here. Thank you for watching. I'm Tawanda Coleman. I'll see you next time on The Plus Side of Nashville.